Thank you.
Were you scared?
Scared? Is a knight truly ever scared? I hark at the thought. No, I didn't think I was in danger for any moment of time to pass.
What about Calazar, the gaming ghost?
That old magician belongs at children's parties with the magic he's casting. No, I don't think I'll be seeing him again.
Look who's back, you leotard-wearing bozo.
I resent that comment!
I hope you're ready for round 2. Summon, chair! Time for the ultimate move. People's elbow level 3. 1, 2. Oh, here it comes. 3.
Ugh. I must have been felled in battle. Be this the afterlife?
Oh, no, you're not dead. I think I put a little bit too much mustard in that people's elbow. Must have teleported somewhere.
Calazar, what kind of trickery have you conjured up this time?
This is no spell of mine.
Then whose magic could it be?
This is an ancient and powerful magic that keeps us in this realm. To escape it, we'll have to play Shadow Tower Abyss.
Wait, there's a second one?
Yes! And it's every bit as evil as the last one.
Then we shall beat it together. God damn it.
Released October 23rd, 2003 on the PS2, Shadow Tower Abyss was developed by FromSoftware and published in North America by AgeTech. Is what I would like to say, if it had come to North America, but it didn't. No, in fact, Shadow Tower Abyss, while being a cult classic, performed so poorly in Japan that Sony decided it would be a better approach to pull the plug and deny a North American release after seeing Abyss sell just under 13,000 units. Worst part is, AgeTech had already translated the entirety of the game and had it ready for a North American market.
So even though I sit here in front of you with a Japanese PS2 and original Japanese game, we're going to be emulating the English translation, because no matter how much anime I watch, I still don't quite understand what desu means.
A special thanks to Morta Swoonlight and John Osborne for making this possible by translating and hacking this game for all of our enjoyment. And another special thanks to all my patrons and channel members for helping make these videos. Coming off the coattails of Kingsfield 4 in 2001, Shadow Tower Abyss brings us back to that familiar first-person, real-time 3D RPG dungeon crawler that FromSoftware is so well known for. This time around, we are taking the reins of a mysterious explorer who has accidentally crossed over into an ancient kingdom in search of a mystical spear whose great power was used by a king to bring about peace in his and his neighboring kingdoms. The first intro cutscene details our protagonist being led into the entrance of the ancient forest ruins, of which he is swallowed up inside, becoming yet another poor soul claimed by the Abyss. We are then greeted to Shadow Tower Abyss's main menu, which has this intense tribal drumming playing in the background, invoking an almost primitive sense of fantasy, contrasted to the original Shadow Tower's almost dark atmospheric themes. After selecting a new game, there is a second intro cutscene that fills us in on more lore of the spear and the fact that not only is it powerful, it was also created through an ancient ritual. And it's also got the spooky eye. Abyss really starts off strong with the almost dark fairy tale feeling compared to the grim dark vibes of Shadow Tower 1. In the first game, Russ Hardy travels to the underworld tower that has destroyed and replaced his home. While in Abyss, your character searches for an ancient artifact that has you whisked away to the magical tower proper. Our journey begins in a dark room lit only by a light of a dying torch that's meager flame is soon too consumed by the darkness around you, leaving your eyes to adjust to the smothering shadows and revealing a passage. However, behind this torch we find one of the most important pieces of story in this game. As we know, many come to this place to find the legendary spear. However, upon reading this epitaph, you gather that it was made by those who dwell in this place. The once great king has not been seen in ages, and the script says that you, who has come seeking the spear, has to take it for your own and command the inhabitants of this land. The spear seeks a new master, and the only way forward is down.
Yes, Shadow Tower. How I've missed thee.
In the first Shadow Tower, I fell off a bridge in the beginning during a button check, and in the second game, I walked down 5 steps and, well, rocks fall, you die. I don't care how many times games do this to me. I love that it sets up the expectation that at any moment, a trap or hazard can be sprung on a player, resulting in instant death. A dungeon crawl classic, if you will, that I, for one, am very excited about. While Shadow Tower Abyss does have the same control scheme as its predecessor, you can opt to use new, more modern controls of which we are using today. Because of the PS2's introduction to dual analog, you can walk with the D-pad or left stick and look around with the right, offering a fresh perspective on the classic first-person FromSoftware formula. All the shoulder buttons are their own variation of attacks: horizontal slash, vertical slash, stab, etc. Swapping weapons can be done by pressing triangle as indicated by this tiny little man at the bottom right of the screen, whose weapon highlight changes depending on which weapon you select. Circle is your confirmation button, square casts magic, and X finally brings up your menu. Now, there is something to be said about this game's menus. Shadow Tower Abyss has basically the same stat menu as the first game, except this time I actually took the time to whip out my phone, punch in Google Translate, and decipher the stats within the game manual to actually understand what the hell was going on.
This was awesome because all the information I found in the manual I couldn't find online. And it really brought me back to that era of when I'd get a new game, open it up, and flip through the manual to see what was inside.
You have your basics, HP, MP, and weight, then the core stats are broken up into physical and magical. I'm not going to go through all of them, but just know that in this game, stat placement is a lot more varied than in Shadow Tower 1, where you just dumped everything into strength. As for the menu itself, you have your items, equipment, data book, load game, and options. And I really want to point out that the data book,
Oh my god! What a masterpiece!
I'm such a sucker for filling out collection logs, especially in the later Castlevania games and to a lesser extent RuneScape. So I was surprised to see Abyss had map progression, which feeds you some lore about the areas you visit as well as a percent to finish, and even better, it has a bestiary, which is my favorite form of collection log, especially when they contain tiny little lore bits and drop tables. The first area we visit is the Shrine Below the Forest. It is here we run into a strange man who seems to be at death's door. He requests for us to kill them all and hands us a knife before promptly dying.
You know what Mom always used to say, the only trustworthy person is one bleeding out right in front of you. She was never quite the same after the war.
Now we do start with a gun, but I decided to keep it for later in case I really needed it, since, you know, bullets are consumables. But for what it's worth, the guns were always the selling point when people talked about this game. It's Kingsfield, but with guns. And honestly, at first I always thought, well, that's not very fantasy of you, FromSoft. But you slowly realize as you start playing Abyss, it does take place in the modern era where guns are appropriate for the setting. In fact, as we progress through the game, we discover people from all different time periods laying about, leaving behind their samurai armor, knight swords, and fishing hats.
Nothing quite like cracking a cold one with the locals, eh?
The first enemy we encounter are these goofy orange crush flavored butthole mouths called Galps. We actually see Galps chasing us in the beginning cutscene, and the shrine seems to be their lair. But this first encounter really sets up combat for Shadow Tower Abyss. While Shadow Tower, and to an extent Kingsfield games, had a pretty milquetoast combat, Abyss decides to take it one step forward and build upon the existing combat, improving it slightly.
Beheaded in but one fell swoop. HARK!
FromSoftware said, swing and hit? We've been doing it for years and it's gotten pretty stale. So how about swinging dismemberment? Depending on the weapon you have, you can lob off arms, legs, eye stalks, really anything, which creates this almost plan of attack going into combat. You might need a bladed weapon to chop off the arms of a Galp, having them drop their own weapons and feebly attack you with headbutts, or a large club to smack some bugs. It just has enough oomph to make combat feel rewarding. Now, it is true that combat is still pretty basic. I mean, you are just swinging a weapon or shooting a projectile, but it feels good connecting with a monster, especially when you see the attacks physically dismembering them. And while speed is subject to the weapon you're using, combat seems a lot faster than in the original Shadow Tower, giving me an all-new perspective on first-person combat. Since Abyss was FromSoftware's final first-person dungeon crawler, excluding the mobile ports, they really learned from the past and made combat feel as smooth as possible. Even going back now and playing Kingsfield 4 made me realize just how much polish they put into combat, and how this really does pave the way for future innovations with the 3D titles like Demon's Souls and Dark Souls. And what's better is this game's equipment equipment is so varied with all sorts of interesting weapons, items, and armors that it makes you feel like you can really make a build to your playstyle. Even pretty early on, you notice that there always seems to be something lying on the ground near you. My main issue with Shadow Tower 1 is durability, and of course this still exists in Shadow Tower Abyss. But either I got really used to that system while playing the original all the way through, or Shadow Tower Abyss is just an easier game. I struggled a lot less with durability in this game, as most equipment have pretty high base durabilities, and as I said, there always seems to be a new piece of armor or weapon laying around in every room you go to. In fact, there have been multiple instances where I was over encumbered and had to slowly slog my way through an area to deposit my items to the shop.
Shops in Abyss are honestly such a huge upgrade from the first game. Gone are the days of the snake women or goblin men stealing your soul in exchange for items. Now we have these altar looking things.
You got 3 types of shops: red, which can be used to sacrifice items for health, purple, which can be used to sacrifice health for item durability, or green, which actually functions as your typical shop. Now, I rarely use the red shops since there always seem to be a plethora of healing potions around, of which taking fully restores your HP, rendering the red shops useless. Now, the purple shops I used a bit more often since fixing durability is huge, but definitely use them sparingly as the health it took for me to repair my items was ridiculously high. I found I was better off selling almost broken items for Cunes and buying Dorito Ash to fix the durability on my equipped items. Now, the green shops, on the other hand, are extremely useful. They're a place of refuge, as you can store and withdraw items here. You can also buy all sorts of items for Cunes, small coins found throughout the areas of Shadow Tower Abyss. Or you can sell items for Cunes, which has come in handy for me as sometimes I end up with way too many items, and I could use the extra cash to go towards new weapons or healing potions. And if you're wondering, Tricky, items are all well and good, but how do I level up? Well, my friend, don't you worry your poor uneducated heads, because soul pods, or as I like to call them, salt and pepper shakers, make their reappearance in Abyss. When you find one of these little buggers, they grant you small doses of ability points that you can put into stats of your choosing. Leveling up in Shadow Tower Abyss is less about hitting an XP threshold and more about equipping powerful gear that raises your stats. And you can defeat enemies to slightly increase stats pre-designated to each specific enemy, but using armor and soul pods to boost up desired ability scores is just the way to go.
I actually love this system because it reminds me of old school D&D. Your characters start off super weak, but the more magical items you get and powerful equipment, the stronger they become. It definitely passes that dungeon crawl vibe.
As we explore the shrine, we notice that a large number of dead people are laying about, which is a great indirect way of telling the player that while it's not uncommon for mortals to enter here, it is uncommon for them to survive, but that shall hold no sway on us as we venture deeper on our quest. We end up finding a sword and a stone, but upon pulling it out, a new path is revealed to us, leading down a hole. It is here we meet with the first friendly NPC that's not dying, this screeching creature. And as it rows the boat gently down the stream, we come to a large open cavern that reveals in almost a cinematic real-time cutscene this great symbol carved above an eldritch tunnel.
Abyss does a much better job at its storytelling than Shadow Tower 1 does. While the first game was almost a plug and play, having you traverse its dark and oppressive atmosphere, Abyss feels almost more whimsical and cinematic, having you traverse through different areas, showing set pieces as you climb the tower.
The base of the Shadow Tower is known as the Blue Light Area, home to the frogmen and kind of a hub world of sorts, but calling it that is a bit of a stretch since you don't really need to come back here at all. It does house 3 shops and a save point, which is really helpful, especially in the early sections of the game, but also a familiar NPC. Ariel, or her original untranslated name, Rurafon, makes another appearance in Shadow Tower Abyss, but for the sake of my own dyslexia, I'm gonna call her Ariel. Rurafon I can't do it. My brain don't work well. Ariel's part in this story is much bigger than before. We meet her in the first save area, of which she lets us know there are 7 masters of this tower, and to defeat them all is to claim the spear. Ariel requests us to defeat these beings and gives us a key that gives us access to the worlds beyond the tower's base. And in true Ariel fashion, she disappears. But with key in hand, we set off to defeat the 7 lords and their domains, and scale the Shadow Tower.
Something subtle about Abyss that I really enjoy is in the first Shadow Tower, they have you going deeper into the tower dungeon. But in Abyss, it has you scaling upwards like you would an actual tower. While this doesn't hold any mechanical benefit, for me, it symbolizes polarity.
A shift in FromSoftware's more simple game design of its older titles to the now more complex narratives and gameplay of the newer games. Abyss's format works like this. We enter a main elevator hub just off the blue light area. We are then presented with a few doorways which lead to domains. Most domains are ruled by a lord of sorts, and it's our job to go in, clear out the lord, grab the lift key, and continue our ascension of the tower. Simple enough, right? Well, where Abyss strives is the stories in which each of these levels tell. It's not enough just to have a theme. Each level has an indirect story being told, and it really makes going through each of the domains an absolute treat. The first domain we visit is a mine known as the White Wall domain, and this place is home to some of my favorite little monsters. These creatures are known as Mordories, and after reading their bestiary entry, we find out that these ugly creatures are actually slaves to the master who rules over this domain, making me feel real bad when I cut their eyes off. Speaking of the master, as we explore this area, we hear this horrific bestial growl. And immediately, any Midori's in the vicinity, hostile or not, begin to shudder. Brilliant! Such great world building! They completely sacrifice any bit of safety for themselves mid-combat because they are so terrified of the lord of this domain that they freeze in fear. Love it. Without a doubt, Abyss's world building outshines the first game, as enemies actually feel like they are part of the world. So much so, some of the monsters even have different personalities. For example, blue Midori's are more aggressive than red Midori's. They even work together to take you down, as the large Midori's hang back and hurl fireballs at you, while the red ones screech, applying a gravity affliction to you, and the blue ones jump in there and start whacking you. While Shadow Tower and Kingsfield games had enemies swarm and attack you, I don't think I ever felt like those monsters were actually out to get me. They were just monsters. But in Abyss, I feel like there is an intelligence behind them, and it really makes you sit back and go, hype. Deeper in the White Wall domain, I find and equipped a cursed bracelet that's description says, improves the body at the mind's expense. There are 6 different afflictions that you can get in Abyss: poison, paralysis, darkness, curse, gravity, and sealed. Poison and paralysis are a no-brainer. Darkness blinds you. Curse halves all your stats. Gravity slows you, and sealed prevents you from using magic. The bracelet we pick up boosts our physical stats, but completely negates your ability to cast magic by providing a constant sealed affliction to your character. Fortunately, we can't use magic yet, so the boost to my physical stats is nice, but unfortunately, being sealed absolutely sucks. There is this constant dull yellow that goes around your screen, and it annoyed me so much that I just couldn't keep the bracelet on. I do love when games give you a cursed item that also has a benefit of sorts with it. It once again brings me back to that old school Dungeons and Dragons where you find a magical item that has a sick benefit, but it also has a secret curse that causes a TPK, because it turns out that +2 ring of protection gets all the zombies around you to target you, and your friends say, hey man, take off the ring, it's the ring, it's the ring, and you go, bro, it's not the ring, don't worry about it, and then everybody dies. It really makes you question the risk reward. We eventually get to the end of the White Wall area, and 3 doors block our path. We clearly don't have the key, so I head back to the next area, the Insect Domain. The Insect Domain is a goop-filled tunnel network crawling with these little buggies that honestly aren't really much of a threat, except for the queen. You meet her pretty early on, but she's invincible. So you gotta go past her, find different bug parts which act as keys to unlock doors leading further into the tunnels, which brings you to a literal bug war between ant dudes and some Beetleborgs. Once again, awesome world building. I'd also like to point out that the areas in this game seem like such a step up from the original Shadow Tower. It feels like each area in Abyss is rich in subplots, visuals, and overall depth. However, I do feel some of the difficulty was sacrificed, since in a lot of areas, when I think there's something dangerous, it's not. For example, I thought that this green goo would surely disintegrate my equipment, but it doesn't. It just slows you down a bit. It's not that this game isn't difficult, because it definitely can be. It's just a more comfortable difficulty than its predecessor. I mean, I really only died maybe 10 times, and every single time it was because of gravity. We eventually find an altar in which the queen's power emanates, and we break it, making the queen invincible. Go slap her a couple times, show her who's boss. However, upon destroying the insect queen, rather than get a key, we find our first ring. And just like the first ring in my favorite FromSoft game, Eternal Ring, this ruby accessory gives us Fireball. Ah yes, spells. Spells work much like they do in the first Shadow Tower. Equip a ring, get a spell. Your spells work the same way your attacks do, as you have to wait till your magic stamina gauge has at least one note in it to cast a spell. Now the recharge rate varies depending on the power of your spells, and while I didn't mess too much around with spells in Abyss, the spells I did mess around with were freaking sick, dude. I don't know how many spells there are in this game, but I ended up with around 15 different rings, and each one had a different animation. Now occasionally you'll find some rings that have no spells attached to them but give you boosts to your stats, and these are the ones you want to keep your little eyes peeled for. However, the spell name conventions in the translated patch are a little strange. We love our Vice Shield, which isn't a shield but rather a path of spikes, or how about our Sanguine Blood Blade, just a shower of icicles. Between the shops selling rings, enemies dropping rings, and rings being found through exploration, Abyss has an abundance of spells to choose from that I'm sure all of you mages and magicians alike will find very pleasing. Now after killing the queen and finding the ring, we still don't find any way to progress the White Wall area. But you know what we do find? A goddamn poison area. God damn it. You know how people say Miyazaki loves poison levels and it's the reason why they're in every modern From Software game? Well, that's just a load of hooey, because From Software has been slapping poison areas in their games far before Miyazaki's time. The poison area. No, for real, that's its name. Is an area filled with poison. Honestly, I kind of like it because it gives me underground waterway vibes from Castlevania Circle of the Moon, since you basically have to deal with being poisoned the entire time, all while fighting these worm creatures and finding purity crystals. You slot those into these pedestals, which end up slowly purifying the area, making the poison go away. Now, the good news is the poison is not as aggressive as it is in other games. It only takes about 3 HP a second away from you, which gives you a lot of time to explore the area. But the thing I love about the poison area is the fact that it's filled with secret doors. Abyss does a great job at always marking secret doors in some capacity, be it a blood trail leading to a weak wall, or a small symbol to represent it being different, except for the one wall in this room. You drop down, get a purity crystal, and you see this wall? You see this inconspicuous looking wall? Right there's a door. No boss at the end of the poison area, but I do find this dead warrior, which turns out to be an NPC I somehow missed in my first playthrough, whom was waiting in front of the Insect Queen's room. But beyond our dead friend, we find the key to the doorway in the first area. I like how Abyss does its first floor. The player is left to explore both areas, however, at the end of the White Wall domain, it requires a key that can only be found at the bottom of the poison area. You need to go to both domains to enter specific parts of the poison area, which allow you to beat it. I'm sure there's some sort of optimal route, but I ain't no speedrunner, and sometimes I just like to sit back and suck in those fumes, bro.
Ooh, tell me, were you just playing in the woods? 'Cause you smell like trees. And
Poison.
Back at the White Wall area, we unlock the path forward and are greeted by this ominous blood-stained door, of which we bravely pass through to meet this domain's lord. This is the Quiddle Mordor. I like to call him Cat Legs, because he's just a head and some legs. While the Insect Queen is immobile, Cat Legs here is very mobile. In fact, as soon as I saw him jumping around, it hit me like a bag of bricks. Wow, this boss is... Oh, I for sure thought. Abyss's bosses feel so alive. Cat Legs is a shining example of this. Look how it moves, dodging backwards, leaping towards us. Hell, halfway through the battle, his mane is destroyed, causing him to get even more agile. It's details like this that really show you that FromSoft is really upping their game design. After we defeat Cat Legs, he drops us the lift key, letting us access the second floor of the tower and also giving us Set Sapphire, an ice spell. However, returning to the lift area, we are greeted by Ariel, who lets us know that she is looking for a man who stole her belongings, and should we find him, kill him. You know, it's funny because in both games, some rando always seems to trick Ariel in some capacity. It's like From Software is trying to convey to us that Ariel is a gullible airhead, which I honestly think is good storytelling. We take the lift up to the second floor and enter into the next area. Scouring Rush, tentatively named Plantland by me, is a land filled with these giant pulsating vines, laser flowers, and fungal infected galps. Something I didn't mention before about combat is that enemies sometimes don't die when you behead them. So at any time, just because a baddie is down doesn't necessarily mean that they are down for the count. But that specific mechanic is most prevalent in the Scouring Rush domain, as the monsters not only can survive being beheaded, but also grow back their limbs that were cut off, including their head. The quickest way to get rid of them is to take out the plant that's controlling them, causing all of the infected puppets to just kind of stand around. It was also here in the vegetated halls of Scouring Rush that all of my weapons broke.
Damn it! Ah, that's my last one! I have nothing left. Who's playing those sick licks?
Haha! Looks like you can use some real magic.
I'm being overwhelmed. 'Tis not enough. Kalazar, power me up.
Hark on this!
Kalazar, you son of a gun.
Bro, I have never felt so much power in a From Software game as I do using guns in Shadow Tower Abyss. I understand, America. I too am now a patriot or whatever it is you guys do in your spare time. Guns are self-explanatory. You point, you shoot. Movement is heavily reduced when you have your guns out, sacrificing mobility for power, and I think that's a fair play. While we all love the old running, jumping, shooting through the air, action man tropes, it's just not realistic. Guns, naturally, need ammo, which is commonly found all over the place and surprisingly available at shops. Though they do have a finite supply, so make sure you think before you pull the trigger. And guns are not only powerful, taking down enemies in a few shots, they are also super helpful. In the Scouring Rush, there are these vines that block your path, and you can only get past them by shooting their cores. So in one instance, there was a core on a floor below me, and the vine was reaching up in front of me, blocking my path. So I whipped out my gat, and well, you know the rest. The purpose of the Scouring Rush domain is to A, clear out its lord, which is this big flower in the center that's easily killed, and B, to find the man who stole Ariel's stuff, of which is this guy. But I didn't know it was this guy, and he tricked me into giving him 5 cunes in exchange for a key to a treasure room behind him, of which was booby-trapped with explosive treasure chests. You know, the worst part about this encounter isn't the explosive chests, it's the fact that I realized there's no voice acting in this game. In the first game, we had a wonderful cast of voiced NPCs that sounded like this.
If you wish to save humanity so badly, then you should meet the king. But to do that, first you must defeat me.
But in Abyss, any semblance of voice acting was boiled down to laughs and gasps. We follow the thief to the next domain where we meet him again, and he tells us if we don't kill him, he'll give us a map. Realistically, I probably should have seen that coming. Unlike Waterworld from the first game, Waterfall World is filled with these beautiful, rushing waterfalls, aquatic ruins, and agua dinos. However, this place is as beautiful as it is deadly. While you can't actually drown underwater, at least I never did, you can fall into these whirlpool holes which are an instant death. But at one point you get a life jacket which somehow acts as Link's Zora tunic and lets you traverse underwater without being slowed down. Honestly, I love when games add items that help you traverse environments. Probably because I love the Metrovania formula and I love to see it in my dungeon crawlers. The whole point of this world is to circle back and find the thief. There's no boss, no progression, just a world filled with items and monsters. Problem is, when I do make it back, the thief's gone, and I did not ever find him again. On to the next world, I guess. Leaving behind our wet and wild adventure, we enter into the most bizarre area in the game, the Cliff Domain. A world filled with harpies and bird poop all over the place, and screaming baby birds, which I'd say I feel bad killing, but
I don't.
this was a very short area that naturally consisted of a network of cliffs that brought you to the top to fight against the Chicken Lord. Honestly, I'd hoped for a bit more exploration, but it was extremely linear and quick. However, I will say the Chicken Lord was quite easy because, as with all poultry, we cook them. We take the key we receive from Bird Brains and go up to the next floor. Now, the next area here is known as the Red Sand Spire. It is by far the most hellish of the domains, as you always are sealed, meaning that stupid, dull, yellow is always on your screen. Oh, also, did I mention that every 30 seconds or so, this wacky thing happens where a screech from who knows where calls out and takes a chunk of your health. It's awesome. I wouldn't go so far as saying that the Red Spire area is hard per se. It's just really, really annoying. It's basically a maze, and unless you're wearing protection versus seal, of which I'm not, your screen is going to be flashing that dull yellow the entire time. Now, earlier in the game, an NPC tells us that the spear is actually located in this desert, and those screeches we are hearing are actually screams of the spear, calling out for us, chunking our health. So we brave the desert, slog through the red sands, and finally see the mythical Spear of Legend.
Finally, the Spear of Legend is within my grasp. Hearken all of those who lacked the greatness to find this holy relic, and let it be known that I, the knight, shall be lord this land.
Hey, check out this magic trick.
What the hell? Throughout the game, NPCs tell you about the spear and its legend. Bloody writing on the wall talks about its mystical powers and influence, and the narrative is built up to the point where you truly believe it is your destiny to wield this relic, and just when it's within your grasp, it crumbles, and I love it. I know I don't really outline it in this video, but seriously, through the game, everyone is telling you to seek the spear and to have it break when you find it. Upon our mythical toothpick breaking, a hamburger mummy appears and tells us that he wishes to test us. This creature is known as Quiddle Mandus, and I ended up finding this art book that had a translated page about him on Reddit, where it describes him as one of the leaders of the country that the Spear King had ruined. I guess he was offered up as a sacrifice to the tower, and now he looks like he's made of extra lean ground beef. Past Mandus, we found our girl Ariel, who is happy about the spear being destroyed, and also gives us the 6th sword, in which I typically would be happy about, but it ends up being too heavy for me, which results in me being encumbered.
If I could give you guys one word of advice for Shadow Tower Abyss, it would be sell or deposit your items often. Because as soon as I got this sword, I became over encumbered and had to walk through this desert for 20 minutes because you can't drop items in this game.
Oh, also a little fun fact tidbit of information I didn't find out until after I had beaten the game. But you see this fried chicken legs Nyarlathotep looking guy? Only one of them in the game, and he appears after you beat Mandus. And defeating him is hard, but awards you with a good set of armor. Also, he's the Spear King. Oh, what? That wasn't obvious? In that same translated official art book I found on Reddit, I found a passage about this creature saying the following: "The end of the king who entered the town with a spear. He lost his spear and is no longer even human." Mind you, this is a translated piece that looks to be from Google Translate, so it could be wrong, but if it's not, it's kind of wild to think that you can just pass by this guy and never find out what happened to the Spear King. We return to the elevator, rise up to the next floor, and enter into the next area, the Fog Domain.
I don't think many of you know this, but I'm very scared of aliens, but I also really don't like dark sci-fi. It invokes true terror in me that is so real, I can't function properly. So when I adventured into this fantasy tower and got to this area that looks straight out of the mind of H.R. Geiger, I was a little spooked.
Deep fog obscures your vision here, and there are these invisible skull things that hit you for massive damage, so either you have to run from them or try to kill them, which isn't very easy because, well, you know, they're invisible. The Fog Domain introduces some platforming to Shadow Tower Abyss, and let me tell you, it's not the worst, but my god does it strike fear into your buns. These platforms move around and you have to get onto them, but if you do not time it perfectly, it is a good night, my sweet prince. Other than that, there's really not a whole lot that happens in this place. We go around collecting these Tetris pieces and fitting them into a door, which leads us to the lord of the area, Falto. Now, Falto is this ghost jellyfish thing, and you fight him in this arena filled with potentially deadly pitfalls, so you kind of need to hang back and let him and his 8 warping bug things come at you. Honestly, Falto is one of the hardest bosses in the game, and I had just about 0 health potions by the time I was done the fight. Pay no mind to the projectiles that his minions are spewing at you. He's gonna drop a nuke on you, and it's gonna shred your HP. Luckily, I was able to beat him first try, but my god, I can see how people might get stuck on this boss.
So for this next area, I thought I'd write down a list of words to describe how I feel about it. Let us begin. Pain.
The moving block domain, and I know I keep saying, and yes, that's its name, but it is! You get on blocks and they move. It's exhilarating. This place is basically another platforming segment with looting DLC. You move on these blocks, get items that are tucked away in these rooms, all while getting harassed by these spin top enemies. But Tricky, why'd you say this place is bad? Well, it's really easy to become encumbered here. In fact, it happened to me, and I slowly had to return to the shop near the beginning while moving at a snail's pace and getting hounded by the Beyblades. Then I found out that I went the wrong way and tried to go the other way, which turned out to be almost impossible since you have to stand on this block that moves while being swarmed by these enemies that shoot lasers at you, and you just kind of have to eat the damage. And oh wait, at the end there's these 3 Byakugan battle brawlers that snipe you and kill you, and you have to do it all over again. Beat the Byakugan battle brawlers, grab the gold mask, go to the next area. The gold mask allows us to progress for some reason, and we take it back to the elevators, but meet with Ariel, who has decided now she wishes for death, of which I deliver swiftly. Check your foreskin. Defeating her made me feel so bad, but goddamn, the ring she dropped made me feel a whole lot better. So with this stat increasing ring in our inventory, we head to the final realm of this game. Other than the Waterfall world, this has got to be my favorite place. It's a castle with stained glass. It's basically Ganon's tower in Oot, but FromSoftware's. In the illusion domain, it's less about illusions as it is about unlocking doors. There are these wax candlemen with red flames that upon death unlock the doors that lead deeper into the domain. We also need to find stones and place them on these pedestals to unlock portal puzzles, which lead us to the boss room. The domain itself was unfortunately pretty linear, so it didn't give me much trouble, but I could see where they wanted to go with the portal puzzles. Match colored stones to the same color portals, have you warp all around, try to figure out the domain's riddle. They were almost there. After completing our Wax Candleman genocide, we overlook this burning circle in probably one of the coolest set pieces this game has to offer. Nemesis is the last lord, and he claims to serve the Great Will, and no matter the cost, he will take our lives, unless we bully him in a corner while he tries to spin dash away. I literally don't know what this boss does. I think somewhere along the way I got a little bit too overpowered, probably between the Spear King's armor, Golden Mask, Ariel's ring, but hey, I'm not complaining. But I am. While Nemesis was a bit of a pushover, can we talk about Shadow Tower's goated monster design? I regret not talking about the 150-ish monsters in the original Shadow Tower, so I want to take this time to focus a little bit on the monsters in Abyss. Regrettably, there are only about 50 enemies in this game, but I still love the unique designs FromSoftware came up with. While not as wild and weird as the first game, the monsters definitely give that otherworldly vibe, with the Midoris and Nemesis being my favorite designs by far. With the final elevator key, we head to the top of the tower. HARK oh jeez, when did you get here?
Huh? Be the whole time.
Oh, okay, are you ready to go to the final battle?
Yeah, whatever.
As you pass the dark halls of the final level, you come to the end, where only a door stands between you and your freedom. But hark, 'tis not so easy, 'cause this big-ass heart and little mossy Ariel over here do be standing in your way. Guys, you don't understand the poetic irony of this boss being a giant heart. You see, in the original Shadow Tower video, I forgot to film a level and I did an interpretive dance, a fan favorite if you will, but in that level, the main objective was to kill a giant heart. So now, at the end of my Shadow Tower journey, the lost piece of the first game has come full circle, and now it's right here, in front of me, and it's green. The heart itself is the greater will and is the source of all the evil in the tower. It conjures up an evil Ariel that is the exact same as the original except covered in moss. Killing Mossy Ariel was a cakewalk, and much like in FromSoftware fashion, the heart was so goddamn easy. A few pokes, it's dead. But with the heart destroyed, we get the final cutscene.
And with that, Shadow Tower Abyss is complete. If I could glean anything about this game, it's that Abyss truly felt like a sequel to the original Shadow Tower, as it just fleshed out everything I didn't like about the first game. But
Sorry to interrupt your conclusion, but why are we still here?
hey, yeah, you're right. Carlotta! No! I can't grab you. Is there any way you can teleport out of here?
No, Knight. The tower demands a sacrifice. That, and I'm out of magic from my sick Peter Baker.
It was pretty sick, wasn't it?
Knight, I have one request. Before I pass.
Anything, my friend.
Whatever you do, don't bang my wife.
Hey guys, thanks for watching. This video could not have been made without the help of my team and all my channel members and patrons. And as with all legendary rare patrons, I'd like to give a personal thank you to my boy Kirill. I had a song planned out for him, but he told me he hates it when I sing, so a big thank you will have to suffice. Thanks for believing in me, Kirill. I won't let you down. If you'd like to support the channel by becoming a patron, you can join by clicking the link in the description.
Hark!